Morning. Are we hot? We live? We're good? Everybody hear me? Welcome to iCast. Oh my God, I've been waiting for this for a year. I love it. This is my favorite thing all year long. And here we are an hour into it and you're wasting time coming to hear me? Thank you. How many of you first iCast? Welcome. This is the most amazing fishing show you're going to attend in your entire lives. This is fantastic stuff. Make sure if you have questions to reach out to the ASA staff or anybody else around, and everybody here is friendly and willing to help. So I hope you enjoy your show. Welcome to iCast. So I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence and content creation today, and what I'm going to tell you right now is that they've given me about 45 minutes to talk, and so you are going to walk away here knowing nothing about AI, because this is a massive subject, and it's also a very contextual subject. And so I want to start off by talking about just some preliminaries, things that you need to know about AI and generative AI, or what I will call GenAI, as we think about how do we use these tools for producing content. And the first thing you need to understand is that AI is not a single thing. Every time we see somebody talk about in the media, oh, AI this or AI that, that's not always the same thing. AI is a concept, an umbrella term for a lot of platforms that are out there. Now, generally speaking, artificial intelligence is an analytical tool. It looks at a lot of data and is able to answer questions about that data for you. Generative AI, which really came into public view in November of 2022 when OpenAI launched ChatGPT, generative AI is a kind of AI platform that generates what looks like new content based on what an AI has analyzed in that data. Now, what we're seeing right now is about 1,000 new platforms being released in AI and GenAI every week, which means that these platforms are very specifically targeted for particular tasks, okay? And what we'll see as I talk today is that also means that they're selling these platforms, and that the free platforms aren't always going to be the best thing for your business for creating content. If you're relying strictly on ChatGPT or Google's Gemini, those free platforms, there are a lot of limits to what you can do with them, and there are a lot of what I'll call problems in how they work also, and we'll talk through that. The other thing that I want you to understand is that AI is not a magic genie in a box that just magically produces stuff for you. I talk to a lot of people around the world who what they want AI to do for them is basically be a wish granter. I wish I had an article on, X, and they expect the AI to do it. That's not how it works. What we're going to talk about is how we're going to integrate artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence as a way of improving efficiency and productivity. In other words, these are tools that help you do what you already do more efficiently so that you can up your own productivity. I will also emphasize that what we're talking about is augmentation, not automation. We're not turning over our activities to the AI to do that. We're collaborating with AI tools to improve how we do things. So what I want you to think about with AI and Gen AI in terms of content creation is you are still the content creator, but the AI tools can be used to enhance what you're already doing. Not a magic box that's going to do all the work for you. So before we get into the specifics, I want to go through 10 things that I want you to think about before you start using generative AI platforms as a way to assist your content creation. And the first part of that is really understanding what can the AI actually do and what can't it do. AI can generate things like text and images and video and all kinds of content. And it can do it quickly and it can do it efficiently, but it really can't just give you product. It's great for brainstorming, for coming up with ideas, But what it's really limited with is that it doesn't always have the kinds of coherence, the accuracy, the style, or even the context in which we want to deploy the content. So while it's a useful tool, it's also got a lot of limitations. We also have to take into consideration things like ethical and legal considerations about how we're using generative artificial intelligence to produce content. And when we talk about ethical implications of GenAI, we've got to be very attentive to whether or not it's turning out information that can be wrong, that can be harmful, that can be illegal, offensive, all those kinds of things. That's why when somebody says to me, oh, I use generative AI and ChatGPT to respond to emails, or I write press releases using it, my first response is, I hope that you're spending a lot of time editing, revising, and fact-checking, because the content that's coming out of ChatGPT and Gemini in particular are going to have a lot of inaccuracies. We also have to look specifically at copyright issues with artificial intelligence and GenAI generated content to make sure that we're adhering to all the legalities, both within the country and also in your regions. And one of the things about copyright is right now, anything that is AI generated, whether it's a picture or whether it's written textual content, is not copyrightable because it's not considered protected under current copyright laws. There are a lot of things going on to change that. Part of the reason that this happens is when something like ChatGPT or Gemini is accessing information, they're drawing it from the internet or from other data sources, and that information may be copyrighted already. So if it pulls something, say, from the Bass Pro webpage to answer a question about a jerkbait that you've posed to it, its chances are that that content was copyrighted already through the Bass Pro pages, and these things don't acknowledge where they're getting it. So we've got to be really cautious then of copyright, particularly as these laws are changing and we're seeing more attention to AI-driven content. This is particularly true right now for images. Any images that are either AI generated or AI manipulated cannot be copyrighted. So when you're thinking about your content and your IP or your product, you want to remember that if you're generating it through AI, you're also handing off the copyright to being available to just about anyone. So take a look as you're thinking about how you're going to use it at what the copyright laws are evolving to. I also want to make a note about plagiarism. I get a lot of inquiries from magazines, from web developers. Where does this fall in terms of plagiarism? AI is great for generating ideas, but the concepts of plagiarism still apply. So if the GenAI is just pulling information from somebody else's page and putting into what you're using as content, you might as well have just copied and pasted it yourself too. So that's part of the reason also why we don't just wholesale use ChatGPT or Gemini to create content and then dump it into our production, because you're at risk then of plagiarism too. So for instance, the example I use with the trend of TPE plastics and lure manufacturing, that let's say my PR firm wants to do a short blog post or something about TPE plastics, and they go to a free AI generator and they generate an article about TPE plastics, and then a competing company does the same thing and the information is very similar because it's coming from the same source, now you're in the plagiarism realm, and so you want to be really attentive to that. Okay. That also includes unintentionally mimicking content. So for instance, if you ask ChatGPT to write a piece on TPE plastics that fits the style of your catalog or of your blog or whatever it happens to do, the potential of it mimicking others doing that, you're also verging into that realm of plagiarism. So we're thinking ahead about how we're doing that. That also then ties into attribution and originality. How are we showing where we're getting the information? And this is also, again, why platforms like OpenAI's ChatGPT, which does not acknowledge where it's getting information, become risky if you're just wholesale translating that content from what the AI generates into the content you're producing. That's where it ties into plagiarism and copyright as well. The other thing about this is, and my number one rule for using AI in industry and education is documentation and transparency. Be upfront I've used AI to do this, or GenAI says this, or we use Jasper, or we use this to generate content. That kind of transparency builds trust. Your audience understands, oh, some of this is AI generated. I'm getting calls from editors from several magazines and PR firms who are saying, this looks like it's AI generated, but my author won't tell me whether they've done it or not. So you've also now got that question of, does your editor trust you? So transparency usually leads to a better sense of trust. The other part of this also, and things we want to think about before we start deployment, is that quality control and editing are crucial here. Like I said, you have to be in charge of this content. The human role in this has to maintain as the primary editor, the primary checking facts, those sorts of things. So a lot of times, if you're just using haphazardly generative AI to turn out content and then not going back and checking it to make sure that it's accurate, you're at the risk of presenting misinformation or stuff that's misrepresenting whatever it is you're trying to convey to your audience. The other part about this is if you do start using a lot of Gen AI, that you really have to front load the training models to provide it the content that you're going to want it to use. This involves customizing a lot of the training models. This is particularly why I recommend with the companies that I consult with that they use paid platforms where the data sets, the information, is their proprietary data so that they're always already in control of what that Gen AI can give you, and so there's a lot more trust in what's coming out of that. It really is a concept, an old technical writing concept of single sourcing, where as a company, we have the information about product X, and anything we put out has to adhere to what that data says, what that information is. This is also why learning to write good prompts, and some of you have heard me say this before, 15 years ago, none of us imagined any company needing something called a social media marketing manager, and now whether you're running a mom and pop Etsy business or a big global conglomerate, if you don't have somebody who's overseeing your social media, you're behind. Next thing we're going to see in industry is hiring prompt engineers who know how to get the AI to do what the company needs it to do. That's a skill set that we're seeing developed in AI literacies that employers want from college graduates now, right alongside good communication skills. So we're seeing more of that. So learning how to craft and how to write prompts. Look, it's a basic idea. You write a crappy prompt, what are you going to get out? Crappy output, crap in, crap out. And so you have to learn how to engage with asking those prompts, those questions to get what you want back. That's basically with this same thing. Quality depends on input. What you're putting into it's going to affect what you're taking out of it. If you just think this is a magic box that has access to all the information in the world, and I want it to write a blog post about my new suspending jerkbait, then I've got to be able to ask it to do that in the right way. Okay, the other thing is also figuring out where does this fit in your workflow? How are you going to make a seamless integration that rather than, oh, maybe I should go to AI, that it becomes part of your writing process, part of your production process, that way also not only are you learning to use these tools better, but then there's also consistency in how you're using them as well. That way this catalog description of a product or this blog post or this social media post actually mirrors the next one so that they're not so incongruent. So really what I want you to think about these AI tools as another collaborator, another phase in how you're looking at stuff, whether it's just using it for editing your writing or whether for giving you ideas. This is a collaborator. It's not doing the work for you. Again, same concept here. This is not a replacement for you doing work. This is a way to enhance what you're doing. And then the one thing I want to emphasize here is if you're using these free platforms, you have got to fact check what it's showing you. Otherwise, you're going to end up with lots of misinformation. Okay, so let's talk then about how we can deploy generative AI in our content creation workflows. So when I talk about content creation, first of all, I'm really talking about anything you produce, whether it's video, whether it's text, whether it's social media, whether it's using a chat bot, all of these things that we write or make, the images we use, all of those things can be enhanced using platforms, GenAI platforms. So this is just a list of kinds of things that I see being done in the industry regularly. And yeah, even people writing novels and short stories, and there's a very weird, it's for this industry it's kind of weird, but there's an activity that we do in some of our AI trainings where we ask content creators to take a bulk of content, like a catalog description or something, and use GenAI to recreate it in poetry forms, so that you start to get a sense of what information is it pulling out and what is it including in these structures that I normally wouldn't publish, because it'll make you a little more aware of how things do. Whenever I teach a class, the first thing I tell my students is, I see my job as making you uncomfortable. Because when you're uncomfortable with something, you adjust, you pay attention to it. If you're comfortable, you let it ride. And in industry, getting people to write poems is usually one of those, that's kind of, I'm not the poetry, yeah. So part of it is to get you uncomfortable, so you're paying attention to how that actually functions while using the content you're working with. All right, so one of the best things that GenAI is used for in content creation is content brainstorming. Now, I will tell you, I do this all the time. I recently wrote I'm working on an article for a magazine right now on portable kayaks. And I've been testing a lot of portable kayaks. I've been fishing from them, trying to figure out, are these, usable in fishing scenarios, or are they just family fun kayaks? And I realized that even in my testing, I needed to have some kind of structure in this article. So I went to 3 different platforms and I put in the prompt of each one, what are the 5 most important facets of portable kayaks that somebody needing to purchase a kayak should be aware of? And each one pulled up their 5, of which 4 repeated throughout. And I thought, all right, I got to make sure that I'm touching on these 4, and now I can go write. How am I thinking about the weight and packability? How am I thinking about, I'm not taking the content that they're providing in the GenAI, but I'm using it to trigger what are the ways people think about these things, so I can make sure it's in there. It's the same kind of brainstorming you would do if you sat down with your editors, or if you're a sole content creator and thought, what do I need to put out this month? What kinds of things should I be writing about? And I will tell you, particularly, you can ask Jeff Weekly, who's walking around here, the editor of Florida Sportsman, that I regularly am sending him emails saying, okay, what do you need articles about? Right? This is also that kind of opportunity that I don't have to let Jeff know I have no idea what to write about. I can go to the AI platforms and ask questions like, what are the top trending topics in kayak fishing right now? Now I know what's trending, what people want, and now I can start generating and thinking about how that brainstorming session got me to these articles. So brainstorming is very helpful here. Yes, it can draft content, and it can be useful depending on how you're prompting. But again, if I ask it to just write a 500-word post about finesse fishing, I'm going to get garbage. And so part of it is how I'm asking those questions. And part of that also in recognizing that the whole idea of a draft is that our writing is recursive, that we're going back and looking at it, we're revising it, we're fixing it, we're thinking about it. You can do the same with these AI platforms. It's not a one and done kind of question. I regularly will type in a prompt, what are the 5 things that people who want to buy a portable kayak need to know? Once I get that content, then I can say, okay, given that, what in terms of sales are the real purchasing issue? Now I can ask it questions. You gotta remember, ChatGPT says chat right in it. The idea is that you're having a back and forth conversation rather than it only gives me one answer. So you can keep digging at that content. So with that, then it will help you in drafting paragraphs. It's actually really great at dialogue. So I do a lot of video gear reviews and those sorts of things, and I'll write my scripts and then dump it into a platform called Descript. And now I can start both editing the video, editing the script. I can actually convert it into a model of my voice if I want to. But what it really does is it helps kickstart that kind of thinking a process of how do I want the dialogue to go, where do I need to make emphasis points, all those kinds of things. Really what I use it a lot for is editing. You know, for years, we've trusted and turned to grammar checks in Microsoft Word, to spell checkers. I'm sure that pretty much everybody, whether you're making an Instagram post on your phone or whether you're writing something a little more substantial, you've got spell checker and grammar checker on and you're getting that red underline and that blue underline. That's all generative AI telling you here's how you should change that. Well, you can expand that. So I could take a paragraph and I could dump it into Grammarly or I could dump it into ChatGPT or whatever other platform and start giving instructions. Rewrite this content for novice anglers. Rewrite this content for the ICAST trade show. And what it'll start to do as you teach it what those things mean is it will revise your writing. So I will regularly, because of my position at UF, if I've written, say for instance, something about ocean conservation that I've delivered you know, at one of our fishing trade shows or something else, I'll regularly take that content and simply dump it into Grammarly and say rewrite for an academic audience. Now I have a starting point with that I can work with. So they serve as great editors. And let's face it, when you're writing something, 9 times out of 10, if you hand it to a friend or a colleague and say, hey, can you read over this? Unless that person is actively your editor, what are they going to say when they look at it? Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, right. And it doesn't help you in the least. ChatGPT won't do that. Gemini won't do that. Grammarly certainly won't do that. And now you're getting substantial feedback. So I use it a lot as an editing tool as well. But again, it can streamline your editing process, but you want that human eye on it to check it. Remember I said at the beginning that AI is an analytical tool that looks at a lot of data? Don't forget that, because a lot of what AI and GenAI can do is take a lot of data that you have and condense it, summarize it, review it. I wish I had this kind of a technology when I was in school. I can literally take URLs, PDFs, any kind of information and dump it into certain platforms and ask it any kind of question. What do these 12 PDFs have in common when they're talking about the right whale issue in the Atlantic and the current push to reduce speed limits, which there are a lot of articles out there about. Now I can just simply, instead of having to read all 12 articles, ask it, what are the common themes? Now I've got a good idea of what the common themes are, and I can reappropriate that into my own work as well. Imagine if you didn't have to read everything that you need to know to write the stuff that you want to write. This helps with that, streamlines it. It doesn't replace it. I mean, if you really want to know a subject, you still really need to be diving in and reading it, but there are platforms that will help analyze these kinds of pieces of data. Imagine taking Southwick's data from this year's fishing industry surveys and dumping it into an AI that you can now just ask it questions rather than having to flip through or search or things like that. Very much an efficiency-driven kind of thing. GenAI is great for visual content, particularly when you start doing things like graphics, infographics, design techniques. There are, of course, some questions about the photography that it produces. A lot of stuff it produces can look, well, honestly, better than photography, which throws into questions ethics of reality, those kinds of things. I don't know if, I've used this as an example in talks before, but 2 years ago, the winner of the Sony Photography World Photograph contest, the guy who won had to admit that his picture was AI generated and he'd never seen a camera before. He said, I did it to test the best photographers to see if you can tell the difference, and you can't. And so you can actually, do really well. I use it to edit stuff, a lot of my images, not just in the Photoshop kind of way. If I've got a picture that I want to have more mangroves in, I can simply add more mangroves that are, looks like the rest of the photograph. So there's lots you can do there. There are some amazing things that you can do with text to image, where if you don't have an image of something, you can go to Adobe's Firefly or several other platforms and start saying, I need an image of a surf caster targeting stripers from the rocks in New England. I want it to look this, and then you go to that recursive mode. Oh, darken the hat, give them a little more weathered look in the eyes, and you just start teasing it out until you have the image that you want for whatever it is you're doing. It's also great at designing web pages, putting things where you want it. There are all kinds of platforms for that. It is fantastic for video production and audio production too. All the video work that I do, my friends will tell you I am terrible at sound. I know nothing about sound, but I use a couple of platforms now that will just clean everything up. This goes beyond like Premiere Pro where you have to bring the gain up or do this de-hummer, de-esser. There are some great platforms out there, and I see people nodding, and I know you all are going to ask me, what are they? Tell me. And I'm not going to tell you right now because I'm not shilling for companies, but we can talk and I can point you in the right direction. Keep in mind, like I said, there are 1,000 new platforms coming out every week that are looking for where these niches are that people need things done. So even just Googling what's the best AI platform for sound production, you're going to get tons. The problem, of course, is so many apps are coming out. The companies are also being sold and bought so rapidly that I find that if I talk about an app today, by tonight, Microsoft's bought them and they're gone or something like that. So, but you can do video cleanup. One of the things I like about Descript is if I've already recorded a video, it will take the video, it will give me a text of the script and what's happening, and I decide, ooh, I don't like it where I say that. I can delete the text and it will automatically delete it out of the video. I don't have to actually edit the video. And if you're really working with it, it'll make it seamless so you don't get a cut too, so it looks like you're doing it across the board. Some of these platforms also extend beyond that. So I'm working with one right now where I'm recording over and over several of the gear reviews that I do so that it picks up the style and it takes my image from my green screen, and now all I have to do is put the script in and it changes my lips, it takes my voice, and you've got to train it, it's front loaded. But once I do that, I no longer have to get in front of the green screen. I can just take the new script, dump it in, and say, make a video with this text, and it'll change my mouth, my face, all of that, and now I've got that done without having to do the camera work. Like I said earlier, it's good at dialogue generation, particularly if you're doing things like animation and you want conversation going back and forth. It's really good at being able to say, I've got this character, they need to have a conversation about the difference between inshore fishing with a spinning rod and a low-profile bait caster. What are the, have them chat back and forth, and it'll create those kinds of dialogues. And there's several platforms that just generate dialogue. Other thing that I use it for a lot, and then you all should be thinking about, depending on what your business is that these are great translation tools. That if you're working with multilingual audiences or you want to create, say, for instance, here in Florida, my recommendation is if you've got content out that you want translated into Spanish, that this will do it very efficiently, and it's getting better. I think ChatGPT now does 11 different languages, but again, you want to find a native speaker to check, because the last thing you want is to assume that the AI got it right, and it turns out you're insulting all of your Spanish language speakers because of what it actually says. So I always recommend getting somebody who knows the language to check it no matter what it is. Also great for SEO optimization. It will take your content, look through it, it will match it up to what's online already and figure out what your meta tags ought to be and the kinds of things you should do in order for web crawlers and spiders to find your content easier. I use this quite a bit, particularly when I'm even posting a YouTube video. You can ask it what hashtags, what keywords, what are the things in my content already, where do they fit? It will help you then in that kind of circulation process. But again, keep in mind that a lot of the things that do this best are proprietary. You're going to have to pay subscriptions for a lot of these things. If you're just looking for a free tool to do all the work for you, you're headed in the wrong direction with the AI. AI also can do a lot of your social media management. Up until very recently, I did a lot of this, and the only reason I don't right now is because I just haven't been posting as often as I should. I can take my gear reviews, and let's say I've got 10 of them in my cache to put out over the next couple of months, and using platforms like Hootsuite, I can schedule. I want this one to go to YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook on Wednesday at 3 o'clock, and you can load up literally hundreds on some of these platforms so that you can spend 2 or 3 days. I always hated the idea of every morning getting up going, oh, where are my posts? What have I got to post today? That if I take a weekend and load up, a month's worth of posts, now I can forget about it for the rest of the month, and the only thing then that I have to post are the things that are sort of impromptu, like I heard this guy at ICAST talking about AI, right? That you just dump in right away. So it's really good. You can also build chatbots that will help with a lot of this, that will help manage it in interactions. Building chatbots is very easy. There's so many platforms out there. The time-consuming part is making sure it has all the right information, all the information you want it to have. But other than that, they're really useful. I know a lot of people whose social media now is AI chatbot driven, so that if you make a comment on their video, that the chatbot is going to instantly say, thanks, we agree with this too, or I'm blocking you because you train it to look for certain key terms. So there are a lot of things you can do with that as well. You can also do a lot of interactive content that, love the sound of the drone coming through. Nice move, wow. That was a racer move. It just went through the, never mind. I love drones. I fly 9 drones in my own content creation too. So anyway, AI can do things like create quizzes and create polls, customer interaction, and you see a lot of this right now in a very low level way in this industry, where somebody who didn't have anything to post today will say, hey, what's everybody's favorite line to use in sub 50 degree water when the walleye aren't, and asking for your users, your readers to come back and say, oh, I use Stren for this, and those are the basic kinds of interactions, but with AI you can up that game and also then use that data to come back to say, wow, a lot of people were talking about this thing, I'm going to do posts on this thing. And so you get a lot of that consumer, customer-driven kind of positioning of what content should I do next as well. I also recommend along that is, if you're putting out a lot of content, look for things like BuzzSumo and Google Alerts that will keep track of trends that you put in. I use BuzzSumo a lot, and so I will ask for trends in what's being talked about on the internet about lure selection for snook fishing in October south of Cedar Key. And every day I'll get an update. There were 3 posts about this. Now I know how people are talking about it. Is this a hot topic? Those kinds of things as well. That's where that analytical aspect of this comes in as well. That also gives you the opportunity to look at that data and then target your demographics, right? So that if you go to YouTube and you look at your analytics and you see, wow, most of my viewers are coming from New England in the summer, I need to do more about summer flounder, or if it's winter stripers, because that's where my demographic is fitting. So you can do a lot of that kind of customization. Again, great for generating social media ideas, and so those kinds of idea generators. Again, fact check, because you don't want to be in the position of just posting erroneous material. It also gives you the opportunity to experiment with stuff you haven't tried before. I've been doing the same video kind of approach to gear over the last 5 years. I wonder what some other options are. AI can give you some directions in that. This is as easy as when you're in when you're in PowerPoint like this, and it's got the designer and it'll provide 15 different designs for your slide. That's AI, that's GenAI giving you suggestions on how to think about delivering your content differently. All right, so that brings us to the end of this part of this. I want to thank you for listening to me ramble. We've got some time for Q&A. Like I said, walking out today, what I really wanted to do was provoke you to think about how you might start thinking about using AI, what you need to be thinking about. I'm not going to sell you on particular platforms. If you do have questions, John's got a microphone back there, and I'm open to questions. I will be launching Flying Fish AI a consulting service specifically for the recreational fishing industry in AI, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk about stuff. So thank you all very much. And if you have questions, I can make up stuff.
Sid, thank you. I appreciate your time. You did mention some of the proprietary AIs and the commercial-based ones. Now, we're seeing a lot of white-labeled AIs out there. How do we kind of differentiate what's going to be proprietary and then what's being recycled through the white labeling process?
So in every single platform that you look at, whether it's freebies like ChatGPT or whether it's a subscription-based, they have a they have a privacy and data policy statement that will outline exactly what they're doing with your data, whether or not, so with ChatGPT 4, if you're buying that product, that's your data, it's not circulating. So every single platform discloses what they're doing, what's going to be available, what they're going to share, what they're not going to share, whether it's simply your name and the fact that you've inquired about this, or whether it's whatever you're using in the training data. But every one of them will tell you this is what we're doing. So what I recommend when anybody's looking at a platform is look at their privacy statement first.
Can you give us some recommendations of who we should look at?
Well, that's a big contextual question. Did you all hear that? I'm getting a lot of background. It really depends on what you want to do. So if you want just text-based stuff, if you're just looking for a good content generator, for this industry, I've been recommending Jasper. If you want image generation stuff, there are dozens out there. I use Adobe Firefly quite a bit, but I do a lot of work with Adobe stuff anyway. It really depends on what you want it to do. Your mic is off and I'm not hearing you over the crowd noise, I'm sorry.
There, that's better. I got to talk at the top. You gave me a good generalization and I appreciate it, and I know it's always fun trying to figure out how to present yourself well. And I certainly enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you, I appreciate you saying so.
Agreed, thank you.
Thank you.
To follow up on his question, actually, what's a good recommendation for video editing specifically?
Well, and again, it's going to depend on what you want. Now, from my perspective, if you're doing any video editing, Premiere Pro is the way to go, and their AI overlays are fantastic, and they have more and more coming out on a regular basis. But as everybody knows, Premiere Pro is an expensive subscription to have. I do, like I said, a lot with Descript. But there are several others. There's some out there, and I'm blanking on the name, where you just give it an idea and it will give you rough kind of animated video. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
Another question. Did you use AI at all to help build the presentation?
Yes, absolutely. What I did was I made my list, and having given talks at ICAST before, I didn't want to repeat what I had done last year. So first thing I did was I said, here was my talk from last year, don't use any of this. What are 10 ways that we should be talking about GenAI? I took that list, paired it between Gemini, ChatGPT, Jasper, knocked off what they all repeated, what I already knew I was going to say. So basically for brainstorming, yes, absolutely. In fact, I'll be honest, I don't think I do anything anymore. I mean, heck, I couldn't get to this booth without Google Maps guiding me, so yeah, but yes. Yeah.
Hi, Sid. Buzz Berline from Gainesville, Florida. Go Gators.
Go Gators.
And social media management. So do the platforms not prioritize your posts when they come from Hootsuite or other?
It depends.
Or is there a way to get around it?
It depends on the platform you're using to do that. Hootsuite will prioritize by date, by time, how you want it delivered. John, he needs the mic back. Yeah.
No, I guess I didn't explain it right. Does Instagram say, hey, this one's coming from Hootsuite, we're not going to prioritize it now?
Not that I know of. I honestly don't know. And my Instagram use is about that big. But if you look in the Hootsuite documentation, it will clarify how it does that. And to be honest, Hootsuite only does some platforms and not others. Like I know it does LinkedIn, and it changes on licensing kinds of agreements. But again, go to the documentation on anything you're using. It will tell you what it does and doesn't do.
Hi, thank you for your time. Do you have any techniques or ideas on how to tackle the prompt, like to get the information you want to
Say that again. I've got a lot of background noise up here.
Do you have any ideas on how to tackle the prompt to get the information that you want?
I do. In fact, I wrote a whole textbook about it. Yeah, so part of it is thinking about the details you want back, thinking about the audience that you're writing for. And that the more detailed the prompt, the better stuff you're going to get back. But then you can't let it sit as that's the answer. Now you go back and you have to be able to say, can you tone down the aggression in this? Or can you reduce this by 50 words to get it to fit? So really, the big strategy is being willing to revise over and over again. I don't like the language you use. That's the other thing. When you're dealing with these things, they're not people. We anthropomorphize them, and so we'll say things like, can you please write you don't have to do that, you can just say write, and people will thank you, and I ask, why did you write thank you at the end? And they always say, well, when they take over, I want them to remember I was nice to them, right? But it's that recursive notion of keep asking it till you get where you are. That will also teach you what is it responding to in my prompt and what isn't it. So in Adobe Firefly, for instance, anytime I try to do an image about fishing, it always puts this mountainous scene. The background is always mountains. And I keep having no mountains, and it still does it. So I'm still having to learn to use the platform to say, I want a beach scene in the Bahamas. Now I'm giving it a geographical reference. So you have to really tease that out. And we're seeing, you can online, look at YouTube and TikTok in particular. There are a lot of videos out there on prompt engineering, how to get what you want out of that. It's the easiest way to learn stuff. But yeah, it's the recursive notion that's the most important part. All right. We got one more, Mary Beth, or we're done? I'm sorry. I will talk to you after. You're more than welcome. Thank you all very much for listening to me ramble. If you're in the retail sector, tomorrow at 1, I'll be talking about AI in the retail sector specifically. It won't be the content stuff. It'll be about everything from inventory management on down the line for what gets done in retail. Thank you all. Have a great ICAST. Those of you who are new, welcome. This is a fantastic couple of days, and I'll see you on the show floor.